Okay, day number 6, I believe. How are you going? I'm well. I hope you're having a good day. I'm really tired today. I haven't got the most amazing sleep over the last couple of days. Last night was not incredible. So I woke up this morning with that sense of really tired eyes in a really uncomfortable way. But been for a run today with James, went for a swim. That was incredible. Also went out, grabbed some solar panels for the Mongolia trip. My durable little 20 watt for the drone and cameras and phones and battery banks and whatnot, satellite phone and stuff. So that was pretty cool. My car overheated on the way back, had virtually no coolant in the kind of coolant reservoir. So anyway, sorted that out. I had my ADHD diagnosis this morning. Well, I had my ADHD appointment this morning with my psychiatrist or a psychiatrist, and it went really well. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. He said that the diagnosis was relatively easy. I mean, my mum sent through some childhood school reports that even as early as I think like year 1, year 2, there's like notes of like, you know, well liked by his peers, enthusiastic, like really enjoys learning, but is distractible, and that kind of carried through my entire schooling. So that made the kind of early childhood assessment really easy, and she also wrote this letter which I found quite insightful. Her perspective as my mother on the patterns of behavior and my mode of thinking and kind of being, I guess, and that was great. So I'm really appreciative to her for doing that, helping her out in that respect. And thankfully, I mean, it was really nice. The psychiatrist, he said I have a very I'm very psychologically minded, so I'm relatively self-aware, and I'm inquisitive about how my brain works and how my mind works and how I relate to myself and relate to other people, which maybe this is self-evident in the previous videos that I've made. The diagnosis is affirmative, which for me has provided me already in the early hours of following that. You know, the hours after that, I've kind of just already started to integrate a new kind of understanding and apply a new lens to my life, which has been really affirming. I think largely the diagnosis, and I think I'll do another video, a longer video about this at some stage, because I'm going to shortly go with my friend James and do an hour of yoga teacher training. I'm going to run through my whole sequence with him. So I'll come back and talk about this more, but I think in short, happy with the diagnosis, somewhat expected, not surprised, would have been somewhat disappointed if it wasn't that, if only because I am becoming more and more certain that the way that I interact with the world, and perhaps the way I think and the way I feel about things, the way I relate to people and to myself, and the sensitivity that I have to certain things in life, feel abnormal. The challenges that I face feel atypical to my peers, namely my dear friends that I grew up with, but also a number of people that I meet. And I think throughout my life, I've struggled with the tension between the conflict that I think a lot of Australian people, maybe a lot of Australian men, surely women as well, feel, which is this kind of tall poppy syndrome in our culture, which for me, you know, I've made the occasional joke like, oh, I think I probably have ADHD, or think this or think that, but I've often felt like I do think differently and feel differently than others. And whenever I've tried to explain that, or even just say that to someone, like I think I feel differently, there's this element of kind of like maybe tall poppy syndrome, like you're not special, you're not actually, you know, you don't, maybe you're just this, maybe you're just that kind of thing. And look, a lot of that is probably internalized. I mean, I've definitely faced that from friends to some extent in a joking manner, or, you know, they're actually kind of just like, look, maybe you're probably over pathologizing yourself, which is to some degree certainly true throughout my life. But, you know, I think that narrative is challenging because it's like in one sense, I really like experienced this sense of difference in the way I think, the way I compute experiences, and the way I interact with the world. That's both really good and can be challenging. And it's namely when it's challenging that it can be hard to articulate to people. I feel like I'm not really being understood. I feel like people don't necessarily grasp the nuances that I grasp. And that's not to say they don't understand things in their own unique way, but for me, it's been hard to kind of feel out this safe space with some people, or this space where I feel fully understood. And I think as a result, I've had this tension of like not wanting to talk about it that much, not wanting to kind of be open about it. And I think the diagnosis just gives me some sense of confidence. Like I can say it with my chest. I can be like, no, I live with ADHD. Like I'm neurodivergent. There's a way in which I interact with the world that's maybe a bit atypical, and for whatever reason, that's feels really good for me. I think it improves my self-esteem because I think I see myself in a new light, and that's what that experience has afforded me. And I think it also removes a lot of the shame for me. I think that I was just say that like earlier I was mentioning that like the benefit of the diagnosis, I wasn't surprised, but if it wasn't an affirmative diagnosis, I'd be concerned because what's wrong? Why am I experiencing life in this way and experiencing these things that cause me some degree of suffering and confusion and angst and frustration with myself and pain? And if it wasn't this diagnosis, I think I would have been like, hey, I'm starting to feel very confidently that I'm experiencing life in a different way, and I would like to find out why. So to some extent, that journey can come to a close and a new chapter gets to open, and I'm happy about that. I suppose the note I was making earlier is really I think there's a bit of an alleviation of shame where like previously, like I have genuine difficulty motivating myself, genuine difficulty. I would often forget things, and that would frustrate people and it would upset people. I'd forget conversations we'd have. I'd even be so forgetful about certain things that I would have a conversation with someone, agree to something, make a plan, and then I would go, for whatever reason, I would forget about this part of the conversation and think and act based on this, and that disconnect would then cause conflict in whatever manner. And then it was it would be difficult to reconcile because my version of events is just different. And I realize now how often that has happened, and how difficult that is for whoever is on the other side of that, as well as me. And then I feel if I do eventually click that actually I go, how did I forget that? Why did I think that? And why did I feel so positively that how I was thinking about something which was emotionally charged, wow, I'm an idiot. There'd be a bit of negative self-talk around that, and shame really, and guilt. So, to some effect, I think the diagnosis helps me kind of alleviate a bit of that shame and go, okay, there is something going on. Like, despite all your best efforts and despite your best intentions in these situations, there's additional hoops you need to jump through in order to maintain some semblance of like continuity. I don't know, to make the timeline work. There's reasons why things go missing. So that type of experience, I think, makes me feel, like that would make me feel upset with myself. And I think the diagnosis helps me alleviate a little bit of that shame and a little bit of that guilt to some extent. And certainly not like draw away from any accountability, but just the negative self-talk in relation to the feelings of being stupid for doing things that other people don't do. or not doing things that other people find easy. So, I mean, the long and the short of it is really happy. It's giving me a bit of a new lens. I'm really excited to see how over time I integrate the knowledge and awareness of this into my life, and how it affects my worldview, how it affects my self-esteem, how it affects my identity, and how it affects how I see, how I act in the world, and the weight upon which the weight I place upon my actions. How hard I am on myself for certain things. And truth be told, to some degree, it's exciting. It's exciting to get the diagnosis. I feel like it gives me some lens where I'm like, okay, I've always felt like I really like the way that I think when it's going well, and I hate the way I think when it's not going well, because double-edged sword. When I'm really locked in on something, I love that feeling of like, but I need to curtail that as much as when I'm feeling really bad, it's really dark. It can get really dark and really ruminatory and really exhausting and excessive, and I get a lot of intrusive thoughts. So kind of understanding this, I can probably go and find some more information and continue developing coping mechanisms better, resolve the issues on this end, and kind of temper the approach to certain activities that I have when it comes to hyperfixation, because that's something that I consider really valuable. But I need to not overindulge in that. I need to also be able to pull the reins back on that horse, because once it bolts, it can be really detrimental to my relationships with myself. Like, I'll stop looking after myself, and my relationship in some circumstances, and my relationship with my friends. For instance, here's one. Whenever I get into a new relationship, I will often become very enamored with someone. And there's a whole spectrum of issues around my attachment mechanisms, my attachment style, and my insecurities and my securities, and my beliefs about what it makes, how I can show up as a good partner, my sense of dependence or independence, interdependence as well. All these things, right? They all probably more heavily weighted, but I can speak to one thing about the relationship between, I think, ADHD and trouble that I've had in relationships. And one of them is, I will become fixated on a relationship and spend a lot of energy in that relationship to the detriment of other relationships without me realizing. And that hyperfixation also means that I lose my reference points and my support network, right, from my friends to some extent, and also place more and more of my sense of self, my identity, attach my sense of self and identity to this person, which means I become less grounded, which means I become more unhinged in the severity of things that occur. And so then when things like plans change that just shouldn't really make that big of a deal, they really deeply affect me. And that's probably mapping over a couple of other qualities to do with ADHD anyway. But all these things add up to feelings that are uncomfortable for me, and conflict that is unnecessary for the most part, probably. And I think that, this is just another good opportunity for me to understand how those things might come about and what strategies I can employ to, avoid them or work through them in a more healthy way. There's so many things relationship-wise and friendship-wise that I think can be perceived, reinformed internally for me with this new knowledge in a way that's healthy, and a way that allows me to actually take a deeper accountability, as much accountability as I possibly can, in order to improve myself, but make the necessary adjustments to live a life as an independent person and as a friend and as a potential partner that better aligns with my value system, that is inherently one that values communication, love, support, presence, patience, commitment, vision, and union, right? Like all of this, everything I try to do, I think the underlying kind of objective is to draw down in union more closely to myself and others. So why is ADHD diagnosis useful? It helps me understand myself more deeply. It allows me to identify where my attention can be placed to better positively affect how I live my own life and how I can affect other people's lives, and what I can change to have less of a negative impact on myself and other people's lives. So lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to my psych. It's like a lecture. I do want to just say, I don't think I should say their name, but I just want to acknowledge that the psychiatrist did an amazing job. And I want to, if you happen to be in the health industry and you're a psychiatrist or you're a psychologist or aspiring psychologist or psychiatrist, I just want to say that what you're doing is laudable, and it's well worth your time, and I wish you all the very best in your pursuit in that career, because you do make a difference. And if ever in doubt, the effort you put in can change lives and have a positive impact. And so thank you to you. All right, this is somehow 17 minutes all of a sudden, and all right. I love you lots, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Let's see you. Bye.